Hi guys, it's Jessica with Stay Cozy Creative Co. And today I'm going to show you what it looks like to make a magic circle with 3 different kinds of chunky yarn. So I'm going to start with this Chenille yarn, and so it's really fluffy, and as you can see it's a little bit thinner than the other 2 yarns I have. So with a magic circle, you start by circling your yarn and then making a slip stitch to kind of hold it in place. And then I'm going to do a half single crochet 6 times around this circle. So this isn't necessarily made to be a tutorial, and so I'm going a little bit quicker than I would in a tutorial, but I just want to show you the basics so you can understand the differences and why you would choose one yarn over the other and how to finish off your circle. So as you're going around the circle, as you can see, I'm pulling that end of the yarn to tighten it up, and that's really the magic of this circle, is that you can pull it and close up that center hole that's usually there. What I like about chenille yarn is that it's easy to work with, it's super fluffy, super soft, and it's pretty affordable. So for one skein, it's about $10 on my website, and you can get it at some local craft stores and online. But I sell mine on my website at staycozyco.com. The tricky thing about chenille yarn is because it's so fluffy, sometimes it's hard to see your stitches. So I'm kind of looking around the outside to just make sure I have the right number and to find that first one to make sure that I have the correct loop. So once I found the end, I'm going to show you actually 2 different ways to close up your circle, and I'm going to get my scissors to cut the tail of my yarn to show you. And really, depending on what you're going to be doing after this magic circle will help determine how you want to close it up. So if you're going to keep going in your project and not change colors or anything, you don't have to cut your yarn. Obviously, you can just move on to the next round, but I'm going to trim it and just show you. So I'm going to pull that last tail of the working yarn through the last loop, and for this first way to close it, you're going to find your first loop that you had made, and you're just going to simply pull the tail through and pull it snug so that it turns into a circle. And I'm going to pull this out to show you a second way. I like this second way where you actually go under both strands of that first loop and you pull your yarn around and then stick it back through the last loop. And so this is more of a seamless look because you're creating, it looks like another stitch. So that can be the issue, is that I went from having 6 stitches to now 7. And so if you are going on to your next row, you just have to be aware that now you've added an extra stitch. So if you wanted to have 6, then you would have to do 5 originally, and then this would be your 6th one. Or if you wanted more, you just have to always account for that extra stitch if you choose to close it in this way. Next up is our cotton tube yarn, and this was really my first love when it came to chunky yarns. I love how durable it is, how beautiful it is, how fluffy it is, and that it's machine washable. So I'm going to start in the same way by wrapping my loop around and making a slip stitch to hold that circle in place, and then I'm going to do 6 half crochet stitches to go around this circle. What's nice about the tube yarn is that you can very easily see your stitches, and so since it's just a solid fabric on the outside, it's really easy to keep track of where you are. This yarn is a little more expensive than the chenille yarn. I sell it for $16.50 on my website, and I haven't really been able to find it at very many local craft stores, so it's a lot more exclusive of a type of yarn, kind of more of a luxury item, but it is really great for making weighted blankets, and just gives like a very unique look to anything that you're making. I also love the structure of the tube yarn, so if you're making a bag or a pillow, something like that, it really holds its shape better than a chenille yarn, which is more squishy and flowy and doesn't really have a lot of structure to it. So I'm getting to the end of my magic circle, and I'm showing you, I'm making my 6th loop here. And again, if you were going to go on to the next round in your circle, well, I guess before I do that, you need to pull on the tail to really close up that middle hole. But if you were going on to a next round, then you would take that last loop and you would go through the first loop that you had made. So you would just really tuck that in, pull it across, and go through there. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it open like this. And last up is our Ultra Luxe Velvet Tube Yarn. So this is similar to the cotton tube yarn. It's a little bit fluffier, but the outside is a really soft, really smooth, buttery velvet feel. What I love about this yarn is the look of it, the feel of it, the durability, and that it's also machine washable. The tricky thing is that since it's so chunky, it can be kind of difficult to hand crochet with at times. So you really have to make sure, especially when doing a magic circle, that you give yourself enough room in the middle of that circle to get your loops through. Otherwise, you're going to be pulling really hard and hurting your wrists. So just make sure you give yourself enough space because this yarn is really chunky. This yarn is the same price on my website as the cotton tube yarn, so it's $16.50 a skein. However, since it is a little bit fluffier, a little chunkier, you do get less length per skein than you do with the cotton tube yarn. So this is definitely a luxury yarn, but it's beautiful, perfect for a luxury weighted blanket and so many other things. So in finishing this circle, I'm tightening it up, and I actually only made 5 crochet stitches around the outside because I'm going to show you how to close it up another way. So if you wanted to make sure that you only had 6, or if you were changing colors, then you would just trim your yarn, make sure that you have enough to make an extra loop, and you're going to pull that working yarn all the way through, and then you're going to find your first stitch that you made, go under both strands of that stitch, and then pull your yarn pretty snug, and then you're going to take the tail of that yarn and go back through the last loop. And so you want to make sure you go through that loop that's underneath it too from doing your crochet stitch. So you can see now I have 6 total all the way around, and it's symmetrical and it looks nice and finished. And here are all 3 of the magic circles side by side so you can compare them. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments what questions you have and consider subscribing. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.